I was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window in my downtown apartment, the late afternoon sunlight painting the hardwood floors golden. My silk blouse clung lightly to my arms as I scrolled through my phone, a soft hum of traffic drifting up from the street below. And there it was, the message that made my chest tighten, almost laughably familiar. Really? That's her gift. It was from my sister-in-law, Olivia. She had always had a knack for making me feel small, no matter how much I achieved. The words stung, but not in the way they used to. Not anymore. I'd learned to carry my pride quietly, to wear my independence like a shield beneath the surface. I placed the phone down and ran my fingers over the edge of the marble countertop, remembering the first time she'd laughed at one of my cheap gestures. A pang of irony swept over me. She had no idea what that little gesture had really cost her, or how much it had meant. My mind drifted briefly to the memory of her smirk at last week's dinner, the way she rolled her eyes when I handed her the tiny, neatly wrapped box. Everyone else had smiled politely, oblivious, but Olivia's laughter had cut through like a knife. And yet, here I was, standing in a sunlit apartment that smelled faintly of fresh coffee and lilies, a place built entirely by my own hands. I allowed myself a small, private smile. Soon, she would understand exactly why her laughter had been so premature. And when she did, well, I had no doubt the expression on her face would be priceless. I remember that night like it was yesterday, even though it was years ago. I was 24, sitting on the worn couch in my parents' living room, my hands twisting nervously in my lap. Olivia had just unwrapped a gift I'd painstakingly chosen, a small but meaningful token, something I thought would make her smile. Instead, she had laughed. A high, sharp laugh that seemed to echo off the walls. Seriously? That's all? She had sneered, glancing at my parents for validation. They chuckled awkwardly, not wanting to upset her, not realizing the sting of her words. My throat had tightened, a lump forming as heat rushed to my cheeks. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the couch and never emerge. I had worked hard for that small gift, saved every penny, and carefully wrapped it in the way she'd taught me she liked. And still, it wasn't enough. I could feel my hands trembling, the paper crinkling beneath my fingers as I clenched them. But amidst the humiliation, I remembered what my grandmother had once told me. Don't let anyone's laughter define your worth. Invest in yourself, and one day, your quiet strength will be louder than their noise. Her words had always felt like a gentle hand on my shoulder, a reminder that I didn't need approval to succeed. That night, I walked into my bedroom and stared at the little box on my dresser. It was just a small, seemingly insignificant gift. But it became a symbol, a promise to myself that I would never rely on validation from those who failed to see my value. I resolved then that I would carve my own path, find my independence, and show that success could be measured in more than polite smiles or approval. By the time I went to bed, the lump in my throat had softened into determination. I didn't yet know how I'd do it, or what the journey would cost me. But I knew one thing: I would not let their laughter define my life. That cheap little gift had planted a seed in me, one that would grow quietly, steadily, until it became unshakable. After that night, I threw myself into building a life that was entirely my own. I enrolled in evening courses, learning skills that had once intimidated me: finance, project management, negotiation. My days were a whirlwind of work and study, and my nights stretched long into the quiet hum of streetlights outside my tiny apartment. Every small accomplishment felt like a personal victory, a whispered affirmation that I was moving in the right direction. It wasn't easy. There were moments I doubted myself, nights when I sat at my desk staring at a spreadsheet and wondered if I had the stamina to keep going. There were clients who dismissed me, friends who questioned why I was working so hard for so little recognition, and the constant ache of wanting my family's respect while knowing I couldn't count on it. But I clung to my grandmother's advice, letting it guide me through the murky waters of uncertainty. Then came Emily, a senior executive at a marketing firm, who saw something in me that no one else had. "You have vision," she told me one rainy afternoon, handing me a cup of coffee that steamed between our hands. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're capable of more than you know. Her belief in me became a lifeline, a reminder that someone's acknowledgement mattered less than my own conviction. I took on freelance projects, turning small opportunities into larger ones, learning to navigate contracts, client demands, and deadlines. I celebrated every tiny win, landing my first major client, receiving praise for a project well executed, and finally seeing the fruits of my work reflected in my bank account. Each success was carefully hidden from my family. I posted modest updates, never revealing the full scope of my achievements. It felt almost like a game, quietly outpacing the expectations set for me, proving my worth on my own terms. Years passed. I moved into a sleek apartment downtown, filled it with art that inspired me, and built a network of mentors and colleagues who respected my talent. I had learned to take pride in my accomplishments without boasting, to celebrate victories privately, and to relish the thought that one day, the truth would speak louder than words. And all the while, I kept that small, symbolic gift from Olivia tucked in a drawer, an object that reminded me of where I had started and why I had fought so fiercely. Every time I glanced at it, I remembered the laughter, the dismissal, and the sting of being underestimated. It fueled me, pushed me forward, and became a quiet testament to the woman I was becoming, resilient, capable, and unstoppable. By the time I felt truly secure in my accomplishments, I realized I held the power not just to succeed, but to reveal the full extent of my life on my own terms. And soon the moment to do so would arrive, one I had imagined countless times, a moment that would balance justice, surprise, and a quiet, satisfying triumph. The evening arrived with a golden glow, the kind that made even the most ordinary rooms shimmer. Olivia had invited herself over, her voice dripping with the casual superiority she always carried, expecting the modest apartment she thought I still lived in. I opened the door with a polite smile, letting her in as she glanced around, eyes flicking over the subtle elegance of my living space. The apartment was quiet but deliberate. Sleek bookshelves held titles on entrepreneurship and leadership, not just decor. The walls were adorned with abstract art, a few pieces purchased from local artists whose talent I had supported quietly. My desk, spotless except for a laptop and a leather-bound notebook, spoke of someone who managed her life with precision and purpose. Olivia stepped in, her smirk lingering, her voice carrying that same teasing tone. "Wow, nice place," she said, though I caught the faint hesitation in her glance. "I didn't know you'd upgraded." I let her take it all in, letting the silence stretch just long enough for the weight of the room to settle. Then I reached for a small box on my desk. "Remember this?" I asked softly, setting it in front of her. She frowned, confused. "It's just a gift," she said, a hint of uncertainty creeping into her tone. I smiled, letting the memory of her laughter from years ago fill the air like a shadow. "It's more than that," I said. "It was the start of something much bigger. Something you couldn't see at the time." Then, calmly, I handed her a folder. Inside were the documents, receipts, and bank statements that she had never imagined I could produce. Every payment, every transfer, every detail of her $860,000 mortgage, paid off in full. Her hand froze. Her eyes widened. The smirk was gone, replaced by disbelief, and then shame. You did this?" she whispered, almost inaudibly. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "Every single cent. I wanted to make sure the little gift you mocked was backed by a bigger truth, a truth you didn't realize you'd underestimated." I didn't tell anyone because this was never about praise or recognition. It was about proving to myself that I could do it and that I could control my own story. She looked around again, this time with a new awareness. The art, the apartment, the quiet authority in my posture, it all told the story she had refused to see before. Her disbelief slowly turned to awe, a careful mixture of shame and admiration. My parents, who had arrived as silent observers, exchanged glances that conveyed regret for ever laughing, ever doubting. I stood, allowing the full impact of the revelation to settle. Olivia's lips pressed together, her usual confidence shaken. I had not only paid off her mortgage, I had created a life that was entirely mine, built on effort, determination, and resilience, she had mocked. And in that moment, I realized that the power of the quiet, the invisible work done in secret, was far more satisfying than any public recognition. The laughter that had once wounded me was now the backdrop for a triumph she could no longer dismiss. Standing in the center of my living room, I could see the shift in the air. Olivia's usual bravado had faltered, and my parents' tentative expressions revealed a quiet reckoning. For the first time, I held the upper hand, not out of spite, but because I had earned it. I had the choice to extend my generosity, or to let her confront the consequences of her own assumptions. I drew a deep breath, letting my voice carry the calm authority I had cultivated over years of effort. "Olivia," I said softly, "this isn't about shaming you. It's about giving you a chance to grow. You laughed at me years ago, but today, I'm giving you something meaningful, on one condition: respect. For me, for yourself, and for the work it takes to create a life of independence." Her eyes flickered nervously, and I continued. "If you want help, it won't come with entitlement. You'll need to take responsibility for your choices, stop expecting handouts, and pursue your own goals with sincerity." I handed her a list I had prepared, not as punishment, but as a roadmap. Simple but clear: financial literacy classes, setting personal goals, and showing consistent effort over the next year. My parents shifted, and I turned to them. "You both underestimated me for years," I said, feeling the weight of their quiet apologies. "If you want to be part of this family in a way that matters, you'll need to let go of judgment, support each other genuinely, and stop comparing success." There was a moment of silence, the kind where the gravity of change settles into the bones. Olivia's lips pressed together, and I saw her internal struggle, the clash between pride and the reality I had created. My parents' shoulders sagged, a mix of relief and recognition washing over them. I offered a small smile, mixing firmness with compassion. "I care about all of you," I said, "but I won't bend to old patterns. This is a chance to rebuild, to do better, to grow into people who can celebrate success without tearing others down." And just like that, the balance had shifted. I wasn't just the quiet underdog anymore. I was the architect of my own life, and now, in a sense, the guide for theirs, if they were willing to walk the path. The mortgage was paid, the gift had been received, and now, the conditions for future growth were clear. It was empowering to see that authority didn't need to be loud or vindictive. Compassion and firmness, paired with boundaries, had the power to transform relationships and to show that respect and accountability were the true currencies of family and success. Weeks passed after that evening, and the changes were subtle at first. Olivia began taking small steps, budgeting, attending financial workshops, and even reaching out to colleagues for guidance. She didn't announce it to anyone. It was quiet, deliberate progress. My parents, too, started noticing their own patterns, apologizing sincerely when they caught themselves slipping into judgment or comparison. I watched it all unfold with a mix of pride and relief. The journey hadn't been easy for any of us, but seeing them embrace growth reminded me why I had fought so hard to keep my dignity intact. It wasn't revenge I sought. It was transformation for them. Yes, but mostly for myself. I had learned that true power lies not in humiliating others, but in guiding them toward better versions of themselves while maintaining your own integrity. One evening, I found myself in the quiet of my apartment, the same small gift from years ago in my hands. I traced the edges, smiling at its significance. It had been my catalyst, a reminder that laughter and dismissal could be transformed into motivation and action. My grandmother's advice echoed softly in my mind: "Your strength will always speak for itself." That wisdom had never felt more alive. Looking around my home, I felt a deep sense of closure. The art on the walls, the books on the shelves, the warmth in the rooms, it all told the story of the woman I had become. The laughter that had once wounded me had been replaced by quiet triumph, and the relationships that mattered now were built on respect, accountability, and mutual growth. As I prepared for another evening, I allowed myself one last thought: one I would carry into every challenge ahead. Strength is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you can rise, transform, and create a life of your own design. And with that, I knew my journey had reached a moment of grace, resilience, and empowerment. The chapter with laughter and doubt had ended, replaced by one of achievement and self-respect. I am Madeline Harper, and this is my story. Bottom of form.